Hello, and welcome to another Gramps tutorial. In this episode, we will be looking at how to add both personal and family events to our tree. If you've been following along in the past few videos, so far in our tree, we've created 5 people and created relationships between them so that we have Adam and his wife, his parents, and his daughter. In the next video, we saw how to add source information for a record that we are interested in for Adam's daughter, Sarah, and her birth and christening. So in this episode, we are going to continue with those steps, and we're going to add this information from the record directly into our tree. And we're going to see how to use our citations that we created previously to make sure that we give the record information proof so that anyone who wants to go back in the future and look at where we got this information from will have no problem at all finding where we went to get this document. So without further ado, we're going to start here on Sarah's editor page here. So we're in the Edit Person dialog window. Now there's multiple ways to add an event to our tree, and this is by far, at least to me, the easiest way. It kind of takes out a couple extra steps, and so that's why I like it. Let me cancel for a second. So you could go to Add at the very top in our menu bar and go to Event. You can see also Shift-Alt-E will do the same thing. And this is just a new event editor dialog window here. Now the reason why I don't use this editor versus doing it straight through the person is once we finish this, we're going to have to attach it to a person. So I'm basically just saving myself a step. The other way we could access this is if we go to the events view here and click on the plus, we'll get the same editor window. Okay, but in order to save a step, and so that way we won't have to attach this event to the person in the future, if you open up any person or family and we go to the Events tab here, which it's usually the first thing selected, and we click on the plus, we're going to get the same window, but we're also going to get an additional section here, which is the reference information. And if you recall when we did the source and repository, when we attached the source and put it inside of the repository, we got this reference information box as well. So anytime we're creating some type of a connection and we're referencing one thing in another, we're going to get this individual box here. And what this is it's unique information just for this connection that we've created. So in this instance, we're going to start out with a birth record. We have the birth date. Now this isn't necessarily a birth record, it's a christening record, but it's got the birth date stored on it, and that's good enough for us. We'll continue to find more sources maybe that reference her birth date just to get more proof, but for now this is fine. It's a great starting point. So we can start to fill this in. So the date was the 22nd of August and the year was 1835. The ID we'll leave blank. Gramps will fill that in for us. The description, we're just going to use kind of the event type and a name. This kind of just identifies what this event is in case we're referencing it and we want to see a difference between the events. Because imagine, we're going to have tons of birth events in our tree as well as many other events. So this will just give some little description as far as what it is. So this is the birth of Walisa Sarah, and that's all we really need. You can add more if you want, just be consistent. This is pretty standard, I think, as far as how to describe an event. Okay, so the other thing that we need to focus on as far as just the event record here is we want to make sure that we attach our source because we've created that citation, if you remember. Now if we didn't, we could always click the plus and walk through the citation steps that way, but we've already done it, so we can actually just select our citation we created previously, and it's going to always pop up a window here just to show you what the citation is. Just double check it to make sure it's correct. Well, this is the only one we've entered so far, so I know this is the correct citation. And then once we say OK, it's going to save everything. So I don't want to say OK quite yet. I want to deal with this window up here. So the role here. This is like one of the most important things that we can change here as far as assigning events to people, because this is going to tell us kind of who is part of this event, who's a witness, who, did a certain whatever in the event. And so the role is pretty helpful. And so they give you some presets here. Now you can, again, type your own. These are, I guess, just standard ones that you would see if you want to go between different programs. These are ones that you probably might see in other programs. So we're going to stick to primary. Primary just means that they are the main person in the event. So obviously the birth of Sarah, she is going to be the primary role in this event. Now notes and attributes. You can see we have notes and attributes here. We also have them down here. The thing to keep in mind is any attributes we type in the reference information box are going to be unique to the reference between Sarah and the event. So anytime in a report or a website or whatever type of deliverable we're going to create from our Gramps program in our family tree, the attributes that we type or the notes that we type in here, we will only see them on Sarah's page when she is referencing this event, because this is a unique reference information. However, if we type anything down here, if we add certain attributes to the birth in the shared information box, or we add notes to the shared information notes section, these are going to be duplicated for any person who also shares this event. So let me show you what I mean. For example, we're going to do one example here just to show you. So I'm going to give an attribute, and I'm not going to change it. Obviously, there's many different things. For now, this is just an example. We're going to get rid of these in the future. But so the value here, we'll just say shared info. Okay, so we've created an attribute here. For attribute in the reference information, this is going to be unique reference info. Okay, so we're going to look at this in a little bit here. Let me go ahead and finish this event now. So just remember, in the shared information, we have a shared info attribute. In the reference information, we have a unique reference info attribute. Okay, and we'll see kind of what that does in the future. So we've got our source attached, and we also have our event information. So there's one more piece of information we might want to attach, and that is the place. We do have that information. However, the place that's listed here is actually for the christening event, not the birth event. So just make sure that you're very diligent in reading exactly what your records say. So I don't necessarily want to put a place here because I'm not really sure if she was born here. Now it's probably pretty likely that she was born close to where she was christened, unless the family moved between her birth and her christening. And I will actually find out in other records that yes, she actually was born here as well. But for right now, I don't know. So I'm just going to leave place as blank. I really have no idea. So I'll say, okay, now this attaches, it creates the event and it places it in Sarah's personal editor. However, we haven't pressed OK yet in Sarah's editor, so it's not yet placed on Sarah. If I canceled right now, the event would still be created, and we would see that it's listed in the event window now. So if we go to event view, here is our event we just created. However, it's not attached to any person yet. That's because I haven't pressed OK yet on Sarah's personal editor. So I will say OK now and accept these changes. Okay. And now we see that it says main participant is Sarah. Now, there is one other thing that I actually like to do with birth events. And I also want to show you a really cool tool in Gramps to do this to save you some time. So if you see up here, there's a little clipboard icon, okay? And the clipboard will store pretty much anything on it. So we can store events, we can store families, we can store people, citations, sources, places, repositories, media, notes, pretty much anything. And we can drag and drop them in places where otherwise we would have to go through and select them. So I can just drop this event into the clipboard, and now anytime I want to use the event, it's right here. I can just drag and drop. So what I like to do, and again, this is kind of personal preference, you organize your family tree the way that you see fit. But what I like to do and what I like to have on my reports is any family who have children, I like to be able to see the birth of their children and when that was. So we're going to go up to Adam and Henrietta. We can see here that their child is Sarah. So I want to add this birth event to the family. I usually don't add it to the individual people because it's more of a family event that I like to classify it as. Now, you could classify it as a personal event and put it in the mother's individual and father's individual personal events. That's perfectly fine. But again, the biggest thing is be consistent. So if you do it one way for one family, do it the same for the rest of them. So the way that I like to do it is I go into my family editor now. So we went to the family view and double clicked on Adam and Henrietta's name there. So we can see they have one child here. If we go to events, okay, this is family events. Now, what family events are and how they differ from the personal events is this event that we stick in here is going to show up on both Adam and Henrietta's personal page. So it's going to be listed under family events. So what I like to do, and I'll show you here, so I can just drag this event that I created and saved in my clipboard. Now the one thing you got to be careful of when you're dragging anything from the clipboard down into your window is that you don't hover over any of the titles here, or it will switch your view and it'll get you messed up because you most of the time can't attach the wrong type of information. So this type is event, therefore it has to go into the events section. So if I try to drop an event in the notes, it's not going to work. And so if you do run into that trouble, just hover over events again to get it back. Or else sometimes what I like to do is just kind of go around the window so I don't end up going over any of the titles. So we can drop this down here in the events window again. Now, the difference here, okay, is that the role is automatically changed, and it's changed to family. And that's exactly what I want. So this event is going to go into the family event section. The role that I usually place for any family events, again, is family, so that's fine. Again, you could change it if you wanted to, just be consistent. And I really don't want to edit this shared information because this will change it everywhere. Now, if you remember a few minutes ago, we looked at the attributes, right? So let's look at the attributes again here. So remember we had two different attributes. This here is the shared info attribute. So as you can see, we're getting it in the family reference to this event. However, it's not up here anymore. The unique reference info attribute that I gave it in Sarah's copy of the event is not showing up in the family event. So again, everything up in the top reference information box is unique to that connection between the event and either the family or the individual, whereas down below, any attributes we add are going to be shared between every single reference to that event. And you will see this in different reports. So if you put anything down here, every single report that you run that's going to reference this event is going to have this information or these notes. However, if I have the attribute up here, only on Sarah's page will we see that attribute I added that was a unique info attribute. We wouldn't see anything if we run any information on the family here. So just something to keep in mind. And we'll probably look at this in a future video as well. More so, I use it when I'm running web pages. I like certain people to get certain information about events. More or less, if you're a primary person in an event, I like to give more information. So for example, birth, I would maybe give like the weight, the height, the time, that kind of stuff. For a wedding, I might like to, in the family event editor, so in this type of view, I would put more information like maybe the time of the wedding, the bridal party, that type of stuff, but I wouldn't want that to show up on individual personal references to the event. So just be consistent, enter some information, run a report, see if you like the way it's printing out. If you don't like the way it's printing out, you can always make changes, and we'll look in the future about how to actually make a couple changes to get it to do what you want it to do. But for right now, I'm going to delete these. These are just an example here, so I will delete that one. All right, so we've added it to the family event, the birth of Sarah. We will say okay. And then the other thing I actually want to do is I want to go back into Sarah and delete that other. So you see here, here's the attribute we added before, and it's still there. We just couldn't see it in the family because the family reference is different than the personal reference. And even if I attach this to another person, this attribute would not be there. This is unique to just Sarah. All right, so we say okay. All right, and now one other thing I want to show you. So we attached it to both Adam and Henrietta in a family. So now if we pull up Adam's individual editor here, we can see that the birth has been auto-populated into his events section under the family events between Henrietta. So if he has a second marriage, there will be another family group. It'll look just like this, but it'll have the other spouse's name and then any events attached to that family as well. So it's kind of nice. You can see various family events listed along with personal ones. And again, it's just for the parents. So any family events, even though Sarah is attached as a child, she's not going to get those family events until she gets married. Okay, she's just going to get personal events. Okay, so the other thing that we want to look at here, again from this record, is we've got a little bit more information. We've also got a christening. Okay, so I want to add that as well. So again, we'll open up Sarah's personal editor. We can just click on the plus to add an event. Her role will be primary because it's her christening. Now the event type, obviously we're going to choose christening, but a christening is kind of the same thing as a baptism. The way that I've read this online, I've done some research, a christening is more of the ceremony, whereas baptism is the sacrament that you receive within the christening. And one reason why I've recently stopped using baptism and went to christening is because when you run an individual report on a person, baptism shows up as just a regular personal event, whereas a christening shows up under the heading religious events. So I like to kind of group them. So therefore, I've been starting to use christening wherever I normally would have said baptism. Unless there's some weird circumstance, which I haven't run into yet, I'm going to continue to use christening now instead. So the date for the christening, again, is the 31st of December, 1835. All right, now the place. We do have a place here. It's St. John's Reformed Church, Orwigsburg, Schuylkill, Pennsylvania. All right, so we're going to look further at how to set up event places in a future video because this actually takes a little bit of explanation, but it's very similar to how we did citations, sources, and repositories. So if you understood that, you can probably figure out how to do this as well. What we want to do right now, we'll fill out something. Let's just go to the most specific place that we possibly can. So St. John's Reformed Church. And we're going to ignore the rest of this for now. We'll come back to it later. So place, we're just going to click on the plus here, add a new place. And for the name, we're going to say St. John's Reformed Church. And type, we could type in church if we wanted. There's one for parish, and I tend to use that for churches. Church would kind of be the building. Parish would be more or less the community within the building. So I'll use parish. The rest of this we can ignore for now. Now, if you want to continue to add the rest of the location here, if you've got a county or a city or a state, all you're going to do is you're going to use enclosed by. And if you click the plus, you're going to get another window here. You can go down here to name, type the next place. So for example, this would be Orwigsburg. So I'll go ahead and do that one. Okay, now we've got more places, so we would just continue to do this. We're going to continue to go enclosed by, add, and add more places. Okay, I'm not going to do that now. We'll look at that more in the future. So eventually what's going to happen is it's going to build a location. It's going to look exactly like this. We'll have commas separated by the individual places, but for now, just the most specific is fine for me. So I will say okay. And again, if we do the most specific here and we want to go back and add more information later, we can do that as well. So description, again, we're going to do just like the birth. So christening of Melissa, Sarah, and that's it. Okay, last thing we want to do is we want to attach that source. We don't want to come back here 5 months from now and say, where did we get this information? I'm not sure if it's correct. So we really need that source to be attached. All right, and it's gonna, again, it's just gonna ask us, is this citation correct? Do we want to change anything? No, we don't. Okay, the other thing we can actually do, again with the clipboard, I'm kind of digressing here, but we can actually pull like citations there as well. So if we're going to be using this citation over and over again and creating a lot of events, we can store the citation here. And then if we wanted to attach the citation, instead of going through our list, suppose we have hundreds of different records here, we can save the one we're interested in and just drop it, and we're going to get the same thing. It's just as if we went through this and selected it. All right, so we can say okay. And again, this saying okay has created the event. It's not yet attached to Sarah, and we know that because the main participants are not listed yet. So the event is there. If we say cancel now, the event will still be in our tree, just not attached to anyone. So we have to say okay in order for it to make that connection between Sarah. All right, so now we have a birth and a christening record. Okay, and that's pretty much all we can pull out of this information. Now, the one thing that we could do, and you may want to do this, is that we also have the information of the father and the mother's name. Okay, so if that is important that you want to cite the source and actually show proof that those are her parents, we can go to the Family tab, pull up the Family, and where it says Children, okay, we can double click there. That's going to give us the child reference editor. Okay, so it's asking the relationship to father, relationship to mother. We can put this source in here as well. So if I want to do it this way, the way I showed you here, I can just pull that citation down there. And now at least we have proof that Sarah belongs in this family, that Adam is her father, Henrietta is her mother. Okay, now we don't actually know the type of the marriage yet or anything like that, so I can't change that. All I can reference here is that I have proof that mother's name and father's name. Now we don't actually even have proof that it was her birth father and mother, but we kind of have to. I mean, we could say unknown. I usually just leave it as birth unless for some reason I find otherwise that it's not. So we'll say okay and okay again. Now, since we've attached all of the sources to many different places, if we ever need to know what we attached where, we can go back to the citation individually, and if we pull it up and we go to references, it's going to show us a list of every single place that references this citation, which is really nice because if we forget where we attached it, we can always go back and check. So in my family tree, I have this birth and christening record for Sarah Wallisa attached to her birth event, to her christening event, as well as to the family of Adam and Henrietta. And now the other thing we can do is if we open up an event, okay, we can do the same thing. So this is a bad example. Let's use birth instead. Okay, if we go to the references on the birth event, we can also see where this event lies within our tree. So we can see that Sarah has a reference to this event as well as the family of Adam and Henrietta. So I know that the dialog windows just keep popping up here and there, and it can get very confusing if you don't quite know what you're doing. But hopefully after seeing this example and kind of playing around with it yourself, you'll get a little better feel for how Gramps works, because it's very simple and it's very basic, but it's just if you don't quite know what's going on, it gets confusing because you have so many windows and they all kind of say the same thing. But if you fill things out correctly and you attach them correctly, it should work out pretty well for you. So, all right, so the next thing that I want to do is we're going to attach another similar record to Sarah. I want to give you just a couple examples in case this one wasn't quite enough. So we're going to kind of do a review as well for how to create people and a citation, because I want to do all of that at once. As I said before, it's always important to do your citation, and my rule of thumb is I don't put anything in my tree unless I've entered the citation first, because I know that I would rather not do it, but I know that in the future it's going to be way more helpful if I have that citation there. So the next record I want to look at is a marriage record. So we see that here that Sarah got married to someone named Isaac Huffman, and here's the event date and the place. So we can see she's now in Ohio. Okay, now I know her name's misspelled, but I've done enough research to know that this is the right person that we're looking for. So first of all, we want to create our citation. Now this came off of Family Search. So the good thing is, unlike the last video, we don't have to create a repository. We already have a Family Search repository. Now I'm going to do this all in one step. Okay, I'm not going to go through the source and citation, then go through people, and then go through events. I'm actually going to create this family all at once. You can see at least one way to do this kind of quickly and eliminate a lot of the extra steps and just see how you can enter families in a different way. So again, I'm going to create a new family in the end. That's what I want. I want to show that there's a marriage between some dude named Isaac and Sarah, who we've been working with. So I'm going to create a new family. We know that the mother is listed as Sarah. All right, and you can see here now we've got birth information. It's going to pull that in. We also know that it's a marriage. Okay, the groom we don't have yet. We got to create that. So his name is Isaac Huffman. Obviously, it's already selected male for us. All right, and that's just about all that we know. Let's see. Let's actually open up the individual record here just to see exactly what it says. So it's in Pickaway County, Ohio. Isaac Huffman, let's see, he is more than 21 years old. He has no living lawful wife, and Sarah is more than 18. So we're also getting some birth information here. We can at least attach this as well to Sarah's birth date, and this just kind of gives another piece of evidence that the date that we have is correct, because we can figure, so the date here is 1859, so 18 years from that, and we can check to just make sure that this is the same Sarah that we're talking about. Okay, we don't have Isaac's birth date, but what we do have is that he is older than 21 on the 9th day of August, 1859. So we could actually indicate that as well. But first, let's create a citation. So let's just, we're going to put Isaac in there. That's fine. All right, we're going to create a source citation here for this marriage. So we're going to do this. Now, we can do it one of two ways. We can be very specific and move out more broad. What I like to do is kind of start broad and move specific. So we're going to create this new source instead of filling out this citation information and then doing the source. Okay, so repositories, we've already got the repository, it's Family Search. If it was a new one, we could create it. The media type is electronic. I tend to use electronic anytime that it's a website. Whether or not it's actually a picture of a microfilm or not, I just kind of standardly use electronic there. Okay, so that's all we really need for the source. Now we can type in the title. So our source here is Ohio County Marriages. Okay, the author, well, I mean, we could put in Family Search if we want. I'm going to leave that blank unless I have a better author. Publication information, this is where I would type familysearch.org. And that's all I need for the source, is just the publication, title, author. Okay, now the date. So this is kind of the date of the entry of the source we're referencing. So we are going to be referencing the marriage information here. Now, what you can see is that we also down here have something from the 9th of August, and this is actually kind of just like the marriage license. They're allowed to get married. They have permission from the judge. Whereas here is actually a record as far as the date that they did get married. So we can actually put both of these pieces of information in here, but what date do we use? Well, I tend to use the one that I'm more interested in if there are two. So I'm going to use the 11th of August, 1859. I could use the 9th of August. It doesn't really matter as long as it's going to help us find the record again. So again, I will use the 11th of August, 1859. And the volume or page, okay, so we want to again go back to the way that it was indexed here, because if we ever need to find it again, we've got to spell it exactly the way it is. So it's Isaac Huffman and Sarah Wolliser with an O. So we'll go back, Huffman, Isaac, and Wolliser. And page 431. Right? Yes. Okay, the one last thing I like to do is I like to pull the entire citation here, and it got pulled onto 2 pages, so we're going to have to edit it a little bit here. So new note, it's going to be a citation. Okay. One thing, if you use this link, make sure that you remove that extra space there, because on Family Search it kind of gets split. It's probably not going to take you to the right place unless you get that last few letters there on the same line. So let's see. We got to take out this here. This is just extra information that got pulled in accidentally. Okay. And we can always kind of remove all the extra line returns there. Okay, so that looks pretty good. If we ever need to return to this record, we can just click on that link there. So we say OK, and OK again. All right, so now our citation's created and it's been automatically attached to this family. Now, what we also said is we could add some information for Isaac. So this kind of gave a little bit of information about his birth. We know that he was born before 1838, August 1838. Now, we could be specific and say the 9th of August, but I'm just going to say August 1838. So let's do this real quick. A birth event, it's already said. So date, we can type in various things, and if we need help, we can also use this date editor. Okay, so this is actually just going to be a calculated date. We don't really know the date specifically. So calculated, and it's going to be let's just type in 1838 here, say OK, and then we can fix it. So calculated before August 1838. And Gramps will accept that. So birth of Huffman Isaac. Okay, and we don't know anything about the place, so that's all right. Okay, so now we've got the family created, and we've got birth dates. The last thing that we could add here, so this was the kind of marriage license, is the 9th of August. So let's create a family event here. So the first one is suggesting marriage, but I'm going to do marriage license. Now, if you see, we're in the family editor, so therefore it's pulled out different events here and showing us just kind of the family ones, because that's the ones we'd be more interested in this dialogue. So marriage license, we'll type the 9th of August, 1850. Is it 9? Yes. Okay. And place, we'll type in, what do we know? Pickaway and county. And we'll look in the future video how to kind of put the rest of that information in there. For now, that's enough. Marriage license of Huffman, Isaac, and let's see, how are we spelling it here? Wallace, Sarah. Okay, we'll attach this source because, again, we're getting this information from here, so we want to make sure that if we ever want to go back in the future and say, where the heck did we find this license information, we can look at the source and say, oh, that's where, and pull it up and look at it. Okay, so we now have a marriage license event here. And you can also see that we have the father and mother's events listed down here as well. So it's kind of flipped. If we went to the mother's event, it will show family events. And if we go to the father's editor, it will show father's events plus family events. So now here in the family editor, it's showing family events plus father and mother. Okay, so one more thing to add. We want to add the marriage. And the marriage was on the 11th of August, 1859. Marriage of Huffman, Isaac, and Sarah. And again, we can choose this place again, so let's just do Pickaway County for now. And oops, don't forget to add your source. So again, this came all from the same record. So you see how many times I attach a source to different places, and that's why it's important to have the sources set up first, because otherwise you're going to have to go back and try to remember all the places that you referenced this source. Alright, so we'll say okay. Now we've got marriage license and marriage. If these ever get out of order, you can use these arrows here to kind of move them up or down on the list if you want to arrange them in a certain way. You can also just click on one of these headings here and it'll arrange it either ascendingly or descendingly, but I tend to like to just kind of do it the way I want, because sometimes I might not want them ascendingly, or maybe sometimes we don't have dates, in which case it'll just be bumped up to the top or bottom. Alright, so we've got married, we've got the two people, we've got the two events, and that's pretty much all we can pull out of here. Of course, we do have a name of the person who officiated the wedding. If we wanted to add that, we could as well. For now, I'm going to leave that out though. So, alright, so if we say okay, we've now created that family. We've attached all the sources. And Isaac Hoffman will now be added into our tree. So all the information that we edited through the family editor is going to also show up here. So we just did everything in one step, which is going to make things a lot quicker for you if you can kind of get this down. The main thing is just kind of wrap your head around how many dialog windows open up and which one you put which information in. Okay, so now we know how to add people, we know how to cite our sources, we know a little bit about the places, but we're going to look at that in the future. And we also know how to add events. So this is enough for you to really get started on your tree and start entering a lot of information. So if you liked this video and you found it helpful, please like and subscribe. That helps tell YouTube that these videos are quality videos and we can continue to make them. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos, please leave them down below in the comment section. Have an awesome day, and thank you so much for watching.